we need to make a change. We need to make a change now. And we literally just went onto and I'm being honest, onto the Our Kids network, like onto the ourkids.net website, and started looking through some of the private schools. And we came across Edelweiss, and my wife and I just said, you know what, let's take a chance. Let's go and see them.
Edelweiss Private Academy in Ottawa specializes in supporting kids with specific learning and behavioral needs. For Steve and Jen Marison, it's not just a school, it's a lifesaver. Their 7-year-old son Liam has autism and has been there for just over a year. In that time, with the support he's received and the support they've received, the change they've experienced has given them a new lease on education and new hope for the future.
Would you tell me a bit about Edelweiss?
So it's a private school for primarily kids with special needs. They specialize in meeting the needs of kids on the autism spectrum, but also other children with other special needs, from behavioral to more social emotional problems. And their focus is first on the behavior and the social skills, and then on integrating the learning into the daily routine. Our son has been there, this is his second year. He started when he was in grade 1. He's just finishing grade 2.
Tell me about what this first year there has done for Liam and for your family.
So Edelweiss Private Academy, or EPA, it was the first school that Liam has attended that really was equipped with the trained staff who specialize in dealing with student behaviors and social emotional challenges. It was the first school that didn't even bat an eye when we approached them about his behavior and the challenges that he presented from junior kindergarten when he was in the public school system. EPA did not judge us as parents or Liam as a student, and had an immediate plan right off the bat to integrate him right into the school and right into a whole behavioral plan, and it worked wonderfully. It worked beautifully.
Tell me about where your family was at before Edelweiss came into your life.
So we were the parents that were called at 9:30 in the morning after Liam being at school for a half an hour to come and pick him up. We were in the public school system, and just too many kids in the class, too many budget restraints from the public system, that he was drowning from a behavioral perspective. He is ADHD, also with the sensory processing disorder. So being in a very large class with a lot of lights and a lot of kids really set him off on a daily basis. And he spent more time out of the classroom and in the principal's office than in the classroom learning. The second we brought him into EPA, Liam kind of came to me one day and said, "You mean I can actually spend time in the classroom? I really just want to learn." And it's just been like a blossom since then in terms of him learning how to read and the math and all the other academic subjects. He literally picked up flawlessly.
Tell me more. Tell me about this change that you've seen take place with Liam.
Liam went from a child who had almost like a phobia of school, would fight us tooth and nail every morning, crying, kicking, screaming, and then trying to run away from school, to really being so eager to wake up in the morning and get going and would rush us out the door. I think the main reason was EPA really being a small school and with a staff that really specializes in kids with special needs, is they really are very good at forming those relationships with the kids, and they're able to because of the time and the small ratios, which unfortunately in the public school, it's not to be so negative about the public system. They really did try, but it didn't work for our son, for our child. In our case, he kind of needed a little more TLC. He needed someone to connect with him, get to know him, and be able to form a connection so that that trust could happen. And once he felt that he could trust the staff, that's when really he was so open to the learning piece.
Tell me about the moment when you decided like something's really not working, we need to make a change.
So it was about 3 weeks to go of his senior kindergarten year. My wife dropped him off at 9 o'clock. And at 9:15, I get a phone call from the principal that he had broken the window to the school. And they had him kind of in restraints. And it was an aha moment that I said, we need to make a change. We need to make a change now. And we literally just went onto and I'm being honest, onto the Our Kids network, like onto the ourkids.net website, and started looking through some of the private schools. And we came across Edelweiss, and my wife and I just said, you know what, let's take a chance. Let's go and see them. And from the second we walked into that building, from the second we spoke to the principal and to all the administrators there, it was a light bulb that went off in our head that said, we need to send him here now. We need to register him here. And we have never looked back. And he has just flourished into the kid he is today.
What was the thing you saw or the thing you felt in that first experience? You know, if you can think back specifically, like what were you experiencing or observing that went like, oh, wow, this really is different?
I think what it was the fact that the school never batted an eye when it came to the behavior, where we started explaining to the administrator what type of issues Liam was having. And it was, yeah, no problem. We see this every day. Like no issues whatsoever. We'll put together a plan. And it wasn't the hesitation of, oh, well, what type of behavior is he exhibiting? Well, maybe we can deal with this. Maybe we can. It was just no hesitation. Yes, absolutely. We deal with this every single day of the week. And yeah.
Yeah, and I would say, just as an add-on to that, is I went to a lot of the different private schools, which were all great schools academically, but it's just they were missing kind of that piece that Liam needed, more of the behavioral support, where we wanted to find a place that we knew that when he was there for the day, that the staff kind of had his back and was able to support him. And we were able to go to our jobs and not, get calls like at the 9:15 in the morning. That was really important to us, that we knew that he was in a safe place and they were able to handle the behaviors. And then, since he began there, and the beginning was a little rocky, we've never been called to pick him up early. If there was ever an issue, they would call us to discuss, different options of how to possibly tackle the behavior, but it wasn't, the big difference was the onus wasn't on us. Oh, you parent, figure out how to discipline your kid. It was the school who had all the resources in place to help deal with whatever came up. So they weren't stressed or feeling like it was something that was unmanageable for them.
What I really want to ask about is how you both felt as parents before EPA, when you were having those conversations of, oh, I don't know, or, or it's on you as parents to figure this out. Where were you emotionally at that time?
It was constant stress 24/7. It was constantly second guessing ourselves, knowing that we have to give our son an education, knowing that he has to be in school, but having really no guidance in terms of how do we deal with this? Like there has to be a plan. And I just felt very like drowning basically in terms of like, what do we do next? This is only junior kindergarten. There's a lot of years left of school. And one of the things that I kind of go back to is every child, most of the, his experience in junior kindergarten and senior kindergarten in the public system was trying to have the student fit the mold of the school. So trying to have the student fit into the box. One of the things that I find about EPA or Edelweiss Private Academy is there's no one box. Every child has their own box. So if one child's behavior needs a certain level of comfort, or like or a plan A, and child B needs plan B, well, they're going to do plan A for child A, plan B for child B, and not trying to have the entire class fit into this mold.
I'm wondering if you'd tell me more about who Liam is as a student.
So Liam is the student who is the sponge. He will be asking you the most obscure questions, and he will sit and think about questions that you never would ever think about as a teacher or as a parent. For example, last year there was a whole program on the First Nations, and instead of a 7-year-old asking just the typical questions of what the First Nations were, he's the one coming up asking his teachers, what were they thinking and how did they get medicine, and just like really diving in and really sitting and intrinsically thinking. And we never were able to tap that out of him. And even going as far as math and reading, he never really went through the kindergarten program, so he never got those early bases of numbers and letters. And this year, grade 2, he's fully reading. He's fully reading at his level, and he's doing math. Like I would say last year, just in terms of one of the stories that I would be mentioning, in terms of my aha moment, was he came home with a math test and he got 100%. And that same week, he came home with had an invitation to a kid's birthday party. And so I basically pat ourselves on the back saying 2 check marks: friendship and learning. And all of that is because of the staff at EPA. There's like obviously the child has to do the work, but there needs to be the caring and supportive staff who know how to pull that out of the kids, and they did it.
I'm thinking, Stephen, that these 2 check marks really sum up nicely the 2 sides of development that that you have to take care of for a student. The academic, but also the social and emotional and all that. Can you tell me more about what's happening at EPA to bring out this in Liam, on both sides of both of these check marks, the personal and the academic?
I'll take this one on. So in terms of, I'll start with the social emotional. So for the social emotional piece, given that it is a school that specializes in kids with diverse needs, there really is always an emphasis on personal growth, and there is nothing you could really get away with, which is good and bad for the students, but it's good for a student like Liam because he had so much difficulty with staff and with other kids prior that they have all kinds of behavioral interventions and behavior modification programs in the schools. So they have something called, in his classroom, they had Star of the Week, I think it was called, Star of the Week. And so they earn points throughout the week, doing kind acts for others, and then the end of the week, someone would earn the Star of the Week, and that would be celebrated. And also taught him how to celebrate other kids' achievements, which is hard for any kid, but especially for our son. So all these kind of skills that he was learning, that about handling his frustration, being able to wait his turn, things that he's actually had trouble with, that we realized from a very young age, from probably his daycare days, even prior to starting kindergarten, but we never really tackled it at the time. And EPA really is an environment that that works on where the child's at. So the expectation is not for him to be at a grade 2 level or grade 3 level. It's meeting him at where he's at today and then building upon those needs. The second piece for the academics, each child has kind of an individualized program. So there's the group learning for the whole class, and then then children go into kind of breakout groups, depending on levels, which, I mean, for Liam, he's a smart kid that learns maybe a little quickly than others, but also he was behind when he began because he had missed so much school. So for him, it was like he was getting this like private tutoring, but in a classroom. So he wasn't taken away outside of the classroom or having to do, you know, private lessons after school. He was still in the classroom, very much a part of the whole community, but really getting one-on-one or 1-2 or 1-3 support, which is really rare these days. And that really has helped him a lot because he really does better in smaller groups. And he loves the learning. Like, we realized him as a learner, like he really wants to learn more, and learning is easy. Doing work for him is not a chore. Like, he actually enjoys homework. For him, it's the social piece that is the harder part for him.
You've mentioned, you know, being taken away a few times, and
Yes.
and I would imagine that comes from his previous experience in JKSK, and I imagine it's rather different than what he experiences now. I'm wondering if you could unpack this idea of being taken away and what it would mean for him to now be experiencing the opposite.
Well, prior, Liam was kind of, I mean, it's hard because in the larger schools with the larger classes, what tends to happen is when a child has difficulty, they're removed from the classroom, and then oftentimes they don't always reintegrate back at all, or it's a very difficult process because of lack of staff or support. But at EPA, there's no isolation. It's really more, all kids have needs. They're kids that could have a meltdown at any time, at any moment. It's just the staff know they deal with it, and then it's over with, and the kid comes back to the class. And even if they have to do this all day long, back and forth, and because one day this child's having a lot of trouble, that's what they'll do. And then the next day, it will be like a fresh start. And the staff will greet you with a smile, and it will be like it didn't happen, which is a kind of very different approach, I felt, to how Liam was treated prior, because prior would be this anxiety, like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen today? Like, he's so unpredictable. But EPA is so used to dealing with these behaviors, and for the kids, especially for Liam, he was always like didn't really trust adults because of prior experiences, just being always isolated from his peers, having to spend a lot of time out of the classroom, not being able to reintegrate. And for him, when he did something that he would call bad behavior, he would think to himself, oh, I guess I'm not going to swimming today, or I can't participate in, you know, art or whatever. And the staff would just tell him, no, Liam, like that happened, you know, last period. You're fine now. Like you look like you're ready to go. You know, you're coming soon with us. And he was just so shocked at the beginning. He told me after school one day, he said, you know, I was so surprised that I was allowed to go swimming because, you know, I had a problem with that student before. And it took him a while to realize that there's nothing he can do that will make the staff treat him poorly. Like they just are very good at giving a very neutral response and accepting of these kids. And I think a lot of kids with needs really need that because they're so used to being labeled or in trouble all the time that it just becomes like part of their identity. So Liam, like he's really bonded with these staff members who he looks up to, and then it creates a student that wants to please a teacher or a staff, which is kind of what you want. And then it's really easy to mold them and to be able to, you know, help them flourish on their path.
You know, the teaching staff at any school is always such an important part. I wonder if we could explore that first from Liam's perspective. Maybe you could tell me more about the relationships he has with his teachers.
Oh, he has a wonderful relationship with his teachers. One of the things that I truly admire about these staff is they come to school every single day with a smile on their face. So often staff will say there's no place for these extracurricular games at school. On the contrary, they will use it as a basis for teaching.
Sorry, to add to that, I found when he first started at the school, he was like encouraged to bring things to school that he was interested in, just so that the staff kind of got to know him. And he was so shocked by this, like he was almost like, is this a trap? So, but he ended up doing that. And then it was also made it easy for him to, once they implemented the program when he was there full time, and he was asked to kind of keep the cards at home and only bring them, let's say, on a Friday or for a special occasion. He was much better able to handle that, because he would say, oh yeah, well, they know that I love Pokemon already, or I've shown them my cards already. Sometimes it takes like literally 5 minutes to sit down and get to know what a child is into, or like listen to what they have to say. And that's all that they really need, is that one time. But when there's so many rules around what you can and cannot do in a school, then it really, it kind of makes it more difficult for the child to connect. I found Liam had a lot of trouble connecting with staff at his old school, and EPA, like that's really the focus. Even so now, like with his current teacher, through this whole COVID-19 pandemic, Liam meets with his teacher. He's doing online learning now, and he's been doing it for months. And he has breakfast with his teacher every morning at 8:30, just to kind of have that one-on-one with him, because he's found the Zoom with all the little boxes a little overwhelming and not always easy to like raise your hand and be heard. So like his teacher literally sits with him, and they eat their breakfast together, and they watch a Yu-Gi-Oh, I don't know, some kind of show on Amazon or something, together, while just, chatting, which is that kind of thinking outside the box, like Steve had said, and the flexibility. That's something that we, haven't seen really before we started EPA.
Am I right to think that breakfast with Yu-Gi-Oh is not an every student kind of thing? It's a special thing. It's an adaptation.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. So as I was saying previous, that every child doesn't have it doesn't have to fit into the one box of the school. They create a specialized stream for each one of the students. And so what Liam needs is a little bit more of the one-on-one outside of the school attention before the school day starts, just to kind of get his anxiety out, get his apprehensions about learning out, and just have that one-on-one conversation with his teachers. So they decided, or they recommended, that we have breakfast with his teacher in the morning, and let's try it. And they tried it for a day, and it worked really well. So we tried it for a second day, and now it just has become a normal routine for my son in the morning, to just help him get the day started.
For those watching, of course, we're speaking in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic. Maybe it's breakfast over Yu-Gi-Oh, maybe it's something else, but could you tell me a little bit about how your experience working with the school through this pandemic has shown you something important about the culture and values there?
I would say that from the beginning, when we first found out that the schools would be closed just for 2 weeks after spring break, the school right away was very much in touch with us in terms of following the Health Canada guidelines. And from the beginning, they really started to work on an online program. And I have to say, like, compared to some other schools, Liam really has not missed out on learning throughout this whole pandemic. Like the thing about most kids with needs, especially those with autism, is that consistency and having a routine are really, really important. So when they lose that, it becomes so challenging. So the school really, knowing that, tried to keep a similar schedule that they have at the school, but give it through a Zoom platform, which is really not easy to do, but they were very creative, like most teachers have been throughout this pandemic, in terms of, offering instruction via Zoom. He's been having one-on-one reading sessions every day for half an hour with one of his favorite teachers. So that's something positive. Then he also has done tons of other kind of activities that, I mean, we've seen firsthand because we've kind of been going to school with him lately, but he's been having cooking classes every Friday morning where we make something fun together. And this is all done via Zoom. And the idea is to not do things in isolation, to still have that social interaction with the kids, but to be able to, continue with the learning. Has not been easy, but the teacher's been incredible. And every week there's kind of improvement from the week before, kind of getting feedback from the parents, see what worked, what didn't work, and going from there.
Yeah. So one thing that I can add in terms of the creativity side of it, there could be two types of ways to do Zoom. Either you just kind of plop yourself in front of a computer, or you literally transport the entire classroom with all of the artwork up on the walls and all of the charts to your home, and you hang them up behind you. And that's what EPA did. So like when they were going on to Zoom with the teacher, it was literally as if you're sitting in your classroom. Behind the teacher on his walls in his own house was the weather chart and the days of the week chart and all the other stuff that they had in the classroom. So when they're looking at this teacher through a computer, which is hard as it is, it's very familiar to see all of the stuff that they had up on the wall in the classroom in the Zoom call.
Wow. What does that do for a student who relies on familiarity and routine?
It gives them the ability to just be comfortable and reduce some of the anxiety in a very scary world. Like right now, when your parents who are normally working 75 hours a week are literally home and you're not allowed to leave the house, there has to be some sort of consistency and some sort of basis to just be a little bit more relaxed and know that someone will have your back. And so every morning at 9 a.m. or 8:30 a.m., he logs on to Zoom, and it's that consistent message, and it hasn't stopped since day one of the coronavirus. That really allowed him to, even though he was sitting in a bedroom, he still was able to go through the motions of what was familiar. So to try and take away some of the scary stuff that's going on in the world and just transpose himself into the classroom and just continue on a daily routine.
Like you said, you've been going to school with them recently. Is there something that you've, as parents, come to understand about EPA that you didn't before? As, through spending this time with him in digital learning?
Probably some of the challenges that the teacher does encounter with a diverse group of kids of different grades, different ages, and different needs, that sometimes it can be quite challenging to be able to stay on task, and I have to say the teacher's been doing an amazing job, but at the school, because I've seen kind of both sides, some of the kids have their own educational assistants in the classroom with them, so that gives a lot of help to the teacher. But here you have the teacher kind of alone, relying on parents, if they're there or not there, to deal with the kids. But I find the teacher has, and the school actually for that matter, they don't look at a challenge as a problem. It's more as, okay, what can we do to solve this, what are the solutions? Because when the classroom was all the kids in the class were having trouble, I found, with attention and kind of this Zoom fatigue that everyone's talking about these days, they came up with some fun ways of, okay, let's try to figure out how do we do a behavior chart via Zoom. So one of the staff created this online gem chart, and all the kids are earning gems, and they can kind of see it, visualize that on the screen. And then when they earn enough gems, they can unlock a prize. And actually was really nice, and surprise for Liam was one of the prizes was that the teacher comes to your house with social distancing and presents you with this box of like little dollar store treat, which for any kid is like as if you're, getting a huge gift. So that was really, really nice. He had a afternoon with his teacher, sitting outside and just chatting, playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And that it was really, really nice. And he did that for all the kids. So that part, it just, you can tell that the teacher really and the staff, they really like, they are so caring, and they really try, every day to make the next day better. They implemented kind of some different fun activities too, because we were finding that all the focus on the learning was getting a little difficult for the kids. So every Friday now they have the cooking class, and every Friday afternoon they watch a movie. We've also taken the computer outside and had like a picnic with, virtual picnic with the kids. So it's been really nice to see, and seeing the staff kind of think on their feet has been, it's really been awe-inspiring. Like they're amazing. They have much more patience than we do. So we give them a lot of credit.
And so I'll just add one thing in terms of the academic side. The unbelievable creativity and programs that they have to teach children how to read, or even trying to how to do math. Like, I'm an accountant myself, and trying to teach my son how to do math, I was struggling. Like, I do math for a living, and I wasn't able to teach him how to add. But then you sit into a math class with their teachers, and the way that they explain to a child how to add 1 + 1, it was like, oh yeah, like, why didn't I think of that? And then like immediately he picked it up, and so I kind of lived through all of his math programs and all of his reading programs with them on a daily basis. And it was awe-inspiring and inspirational to see how they can teach a child who I never really thought was going to be able to read for a couple more years at least. He's fully reading sentences this year, and now I can actually see why, because we lived through that program.
Wow. Taking a wild swing here, and you can never top parents, but I'm wondering, in terms of knowledge exchange, is there anything that you've learned as parents through your time with EPA that an insight you've gained, a tactic you've learned that you credit to EPA, that EPA taught you something maybe?
Yeah, so EPA has definitely taught me that it's something called ABA, which is Applied Behavioral Analysis, which is kind of the treatment of choice for children on the spectrum. And prior to Liam starting to go to EPA, I'm going to say I wasn't doing things right. I had a child who was out of control, and I was never taught ABA, but just by talking the same language and by kind of doing the same thing that the staff were doing, our home life has exponentially changed. Where, yes, the tantrums are still going to happen, but they are significantly less because we're using the same language. And it's also the fact that I know that if I have a problem at 8 o'clock at night with a child, I have someone to call at 8 o'clock at night who is and this has happened, who has gotten onto the phone with Liam and talked him down from a tantrum, and then was there at 6 o'clock in the morning when he was totally out of control, that there was someone I was physically able to talk to help talk Liam down. And just by listening to what they say and how they talk has taught me, I know my wife's a psychologist, so she has already been trained in that before, but as an accountant, I was never trained in this. Like, there's no manual when you have a child. let alone having a child with special needs, to really be able to know what to do when you have a child who's autistic. Just by listening to the way they do things and by emulating what the staff say and do and how they treat him has literally turned this household around.
You know, when we're talking to other parents, you know, whose kids go to totally different schools, but maybe you're still comparing experiences. How much more intimate is your relationship with this school compared to what other parents and families might experience?
I would say they're kind of like a family. They really, it is very small, so you really get to know all the staff, and there's not like, you know, weekly communication, there's daily communication. And like Steve had mentioned before, given that it's a community of not only teachers, but also therapists and ABA specialists and behavioral therapists, you kind of get a whole more of a well-rounded, I guess, multidisciplinary team of people to help support you as a family and the child. So I felt, even for me, dropping off my son every morning at school, I almost had like a mini therapy session with some of the staff some days, because if it was a hard morning or something had happened on the weekend or the night before, I would be able to chat with the teacher. And they were always open. Like, no one has ever said to us, this is not a good time, or make an appointment, or, you know, we never ever got anything. It was, they have a very casual kind of openness with families, and they really do care. It sounds a bit cliche, but they really do, and we feel it, because on both ends, like, they communicate with us when things are happening, but also we're able to communicate with them, and the closeness, like, we've become very close with the staff. They're, I mean, my son would love to have them come over for play dates and stuff, which doesn't always happen, but they're really much, they're very in touch with our family. They know about, you know, things that we're doing as a family, and try to integrate that into the learning process, and to kind of get Liam to talk about things. And it's been really, really nice.
And so one thing just to add to that, it's really not only about the child. Like, for example, during COVID time, they were having Zoom parent support groups in the evening, because not being, like, everyone being in your own house, like, how are you dealing with these behaviors and how are you dealing with it? So instead of just having the child in Zoom during the day and the teachers and the therapists and the ABA therapists dealing with the child, they really also want to make sure that the parents are kind of well taken care of. So they have weekly parent support groups, which I believe goes on throughout the year, but like more specifically during the COVID pandemic, just to make sure that everybody in the house was, you know, well taken care of. And if there was things that you wanted to, you know, kind of among like-minded parents who are kind of going through the same thing that we're going through, it was nice to know that we're not alone, and that there are other families out there that are going through the same thing, and we kind of just had a chance to chat and kind of get strategies that other people might not know about.
I'm wondering if you could pick up the phone right now and call yourself a couple years ago, when you were just starting to work on this question of how do we fix this, where should we go, what would you tell yourself?
Take him out of school right now and put him into EPA.
Yeah. The biggest, I remember this about you, Steve. Yeah. The biggest complaint that my husband had when Liam was showing major signs of difficulty in school was that he felt, at least, that there was no plan. He felt very lost as a parent. What do I do for my son? I want to fix this. I want to fix this. And even though, you know, we've learned a lot since then, and there is no fix to a child with autism. I mean, it's a lifelong learning experience. But the big thing about having a school like EPA for us as parents is that we know that we don't have to come up with all the plans. Like they have plan A and plan B and plan C and plan D, and whatever happens, you know, they can handle it. They have resources, they have the flexibility to change things if needed. And that for us, we know that when he's there, he's well supported and well taken care of. And that's huge. We never thought that we just, when you're going through a crisis, you really can't see the path in front of you very clearly. So I think the fact that now he's in a place where he's going to be, you know, graduating grade 2 soon, going to grade 3 next year, and is almost pretty much at grade level in all of his subjects. That is, and the fact that his behavior is the least of his problems at school. I mean, there just is the behavior that he was showing prior doesn't exist anymore. I mean, he definitely has some challenges, but nothing, like all those have been extinguished essentially. We didn't think he would be able to be a kid that could sit in a classroom. And so much so that we even tried to see whether these skills were applicable outside of that small environment. And we sent him to Sunday school. We're Jewish, so a Jewish kind of Sunday Hebrew school we sent him to with all regular kids, larger class, and you know, he was fine. He had an aide, he had an educational assistant there from the school, from the EPA community, but just like years ago when we were through in this crisis, if you would have said to us, Liam could be having no trouble Sunday morning at Hebrew school or during the week, never get a call, never been asked to leave school, we would say, you must be kidding, that's not our son. And the fact that's happened is huge, especially for him, because he sees that he's able to do it.